Okay, on my left-hand side here, we've got Motor Yacht Alfa Nero. If you have just come out from under a rock and you don't know the story of Alfa Nero, this vessel was abandoned in Antigua over the last 12 months. The person who we believe is the owner, Andrei Grigorievich Guryev, he has, or through his lawyers, have said that he does not own this yacht. Now, he is under sanctions, and as a result of that, his vessel has also been sanctioned by the US. Now, recently, the Antiguan government actually seized the vessel because he's denied he owns it. Nobody else came forward, and the government of Antigua has actually seized the vessel, and their plan is to sell this vessel off. Now, in the meantime, however, they have now taken responsibility for that vessel and they're paying all the bills. Well, there's a couple of problems with the boat, and the first one is a technical one. The boat has 4 generators on board, and 3 of the generators are now unserviceable. So they're basically down to their last generator. Now, while the vessel is alongside in the port, 1 generator should be enough for them to get all of the power they need, you know, in terms of power, you know, lighting, and you know, cooking equipment and all of the stuff you need to live on board, air conditioning as well. If that generator fails, however, then that would be game over for the crew on board. They'd have to move off the vessel because you couldn't stay on board without any power, right? So they're down to the last generator, apparently, according to our source, who wishes to remain confidential. One of the problems is that they can't get parts or any technical assistance for these yachts because of the sanctions. So the companies that would normally supply parts so they can repair. So even the engineers on board, they could probably fix the generators, but they can't get the parts because the companies are not allowed to sell the parts to them. Likewise, they can't get any technical assistance from them either. So ordinarily, if the engineers can't fix a problem with the generator on board, they'd contact the people who made the generators, and then they would give them, you know, support on the phone or online. Usually they can connect remotely to these things now. Now, if all of that fails, then they can fly somebody out to wherever the boat is, and then they can do some work on the boat on their behalf. However, none of that is possible right now. Now, the Antiguan government is now responsible for the vessel, and they are trying to get their sanctions lifted. And once they do that, then they'll be able to get these things seen to. But it also means that because now Antigua owns this vessel, any maintenance for those generators would have to be paid for by the government of Antigua. Now, this is where the second part of the story comes in. We've also heard from another source who wishes to remain anonymous that apparently the US are not currently cooperating with the Antiguan government in terms of removing those sanctions. So this will be very troubling for the government because, like I said, and in previous videos, we've talked about how they are now paying $28,000 a week for the salaries for the crew that are still on board. There will, of course, be other bills that they'll have to pay, for instance, fuel bills, provisions, food for the crew on board, things like that. We contacted the general manager of the Antigua Port Authority, Darwin Telemake, and we asked him, you know, we've heard this information that the US don't want to remove the sanctions on this yacht. He didn't want to respond to that part, but he did give me a statement, and he said, we are working with OFAC to liquidate this asset, and we are not far from doing that. So that's what he says. That's the end of his quote. But interestingly, there was no denial of what we said. He didn't say that's not true. So that's very interesting in itself. Like I said, the Antiguan government are unable to sell the yacht until the sanctions are lifted. So they are taking bids on the yacht, but they're unable to sell it until they get those lifted. And if the US government are not cooperating and they don't want to remove them, then until they do, the Antiguan government have to pay all the bills. So troubling times for the government of Antigua there. Now, you remember there was a spate of yachts running aground in Maui in Hawaii, and we reported on this vessel called Quipo. I think it's pronounced Kuuipo. Grounded on the 8th of March, just outside the Lahaina Boat Harbor Channel.